Elevate your business with CardSaver, your trusted partner for card payment solutions. From cutting-edge devices to custom options to fit your business needs, they've got you covered. Our Business Cash Advance offers quick access to funds with no interest, just a simple fixed fee. From pay-as-you-earn, join businesses that use CardSaver for reliable payments and smart growth. Now, back to the pod.
Hello and welcome back to the Cod Cast, your official Fleetwood Town podcast hosted by me, Ben Natman. Today is episode 4 and we are joined by club CEO Steve Curwood. How are we?
Very well. Good morning, Ben, and good morning, lads and ladies.
You've had to get that in there as well. I've avoided that for 4 episodes purposely. First off, talk to me about yourself. How did things start off for you before Fleetwood Town? Because you've been here a long time now as well.
Wow. I'm getting a bit old now, so my memory fades. But no, just to go back to a bit of history. I used to work at the Royal Bank of Scotland back in the good days when banks were paying big bonuses. No, seriously, no. I was working at the RBS. I'd worked there for almost 10 years, and I was actually working alongside Phil Brown, the vice chairman. And me and Phil, as you do in the office, got chatting, football freaks. You know, I was at the time watching Blackpool. I used to be a big England fan as well, still am, still go to a lot of the England games, used to. So me and Phil naturally got talking about grounds we've been to and football, and he would tell me all about Fleetwood. So me and Phil became really good friends. This, if I recall, was around about the time where the club were looking for a new chairman. And I remember Phil was courting various individuals, looking to get a replacement in for the outgoing chairman at the time. His name actually escapes me, from Lancaster. I forgot his name now, should remember it. The outgoing chairman at the time. And to cut a long story short, Phil eventually came across Andy, who was a customer at his bank, and persuaded Andy Pilley to get involved with the football club. Then what happened after that was Phil, who used to be at his desk doing bits and pieces of the football club's work at his desk, and then Andy said, hang on, Phil, instead of you doing your work for Fleetwood Town on the RBS's time, how about you come and work for me? My business is growing, and you can do the football club's work alongside that. So off Phil went with Andy, and then 2 or 3 years down the line, Andy's business grew to the extent where Phil was completely consumed within that business, and Andy said, do we know who can run our football club? And Phil came knocking at my door and said, how do you fancy, and Andy did, how do you fancy being the CEO at Fleetwood Town Football Club? You know, looking back, great decision, but at the time, crikey, it was a Northern Premier League football team. I had a company car, bank pension, security, but such was the draw of football and such was the persuasiveness of Andy Pilley that I decided to get involved in football and absolutely loved every minute of it since that day. So left the bank, joined the club, was based at Hawking Place in Andy's commercial power offices, spent a few hours in that little back office in the old social club, and here we are today.
You mentioned there about Fleetwood being a non-league football club. Wasn't any old non-league football club, especially with Andy at the helm as well. What was your first impressions of the football club and Andy Pilley? Because from the outside as fans, Andy Pilley was this guy that went, I'm going to take this football club to the Championship. And at times everyone went, nah, we won't get to the Football League, we won't get to the National League, we won't do this. And most of those things that Andy has said has come true.
Yeah, I think when I went in there, I don't remember the exact reasons. I know, you know, Andy put on a great sell to me at the time, but I can't remember the exact details. But I think overwhelmingly more so, it was the draw of getting into football. You know, the opportunity to get into football. What did I know about Fleetwood Town at the time? Not an awful lot. You know, I was a Fylde Coast football anorak, as they say. I'd been to, you know, as a kid, I remember going to watch Fleetwood v Droylsden in the FA Cup. I was at Atherstone away in the FA Cup. So I was actually at the Newcastle Town promotion game. I used to, you know, go to these big-ish games that Fylde Coast teams were involved with. So that was my extent of Fleetwood. My granddad also played for Fleetwood back in the 30s as he came out of his professional football career, and had a great time at Fleetwood. But none of that really probably was what brought me on. I think it was just desperate to get into football maybe at the time, and Andy's persuasiveness, and I was in the door, yeah.
How would you describe your role then at the football club? It's changed in recent years, but at the start, when the club are looking to professionalise, try and move up the divisions and go full time, how would you describe your role in that?
I remember day one, and there was a little office next to Andy's office in a space at Commercial Power just outside the boardroom. And I remember joining my first day, and there's your mobile phone. I think mobiles were, I'm quite old now, so mobiles were pretty new by then. And there was nothing on my desk. And then next minute, a piece of post arrived, and it was the application for the FA Cup, which comes around every year, where you actually have to fill in a piece of paper and pay about £35 to enter the FA Cup. And I think I spent all day diligently making sure that I didn't miss any of the boxes and ensuring we got entered into the FA Cup that year. And I'd literally what does a CEO do? And I didn't actually genuinely know what a CEO would do. And I remember, what does a CEO do? And I think on day one, wasn't entirely sure what it looked like. But day by day, more things come across yourself. You're learning every day on the job. And I don't think there's any one, and probably Andy's a little bit similar, there's never been one really long-term strategy. It was always about, right, how do we make ourselves better? What do we do tomorrow to make ourselves better? Comparing ourselves to other clubs, absorbing everything was pivotal to understand actually what a CEO does. And a CEO, I suppose, is, like you say, more so back in the day, was around a lot of the doing.
Yeah.
And then as people start to grow into the business, more full-time staff, more things going on, academy and all these sort of things, you are then more managing people rather than doing a lot of the doing.
The rise through the non-leagues was unbelievable. How was that, winning games of football? And Andy, it was like he was relentless. It was like we could win 3-4 and it'll be like, we've got another game next week and we've got to get this and we've got to get it. He wanted to be there when it was realistically maybe 2 or 3 years off. How was that working under pressure? Did you thrive off it, or was it a bit like, one step at a time, Andy? Were you there to calm him down a little bit?
Well, I think anyone who's worked for Andy, and certainly like myself long term, knows that he puts people under pressure, but in a good way. If you've got to you've got to buy into this. You've got to really live and breathe it. And if you can't live and breathe it yourself, you would struggle to deal with Andy's relentless ambition at that time as well. So I think I had the drive, I had the vision, I had the excitement. Football's in my blood, so I was able to cope with it. It's tough. It does absorb your life. It takes over a lot of your family time. You're booking holidays around things, and you're on your phone. But you're working in a sport you love, so a fantastic industry to work in. So the rough with the smooth. But go back to your original point and the non-league days and working under that level of pressure. I think there was never really we never sort of felt the pressure to get promoted, but there was always that drive and think, right, we can get promoted, which was the big override. How do we get promoted? And let's get into I came at the time, I think the first game was at home to Buxton. And I think then we went to Leek, which was a pivotal game in the midweek. Yeah. It might have been around that time anyway. So I might have that slightly off the other way around. But it came in at an exciting time. So I was thrown straight into a promotion run at the back end of that season. And then, the promotion happened that last day. I think we played Frickley Athletic and the other results went our way. We drew 1-1 and people on the pitch. And crikey, this was my introduction to football. How amazing is this? Everyone going mental. You suddenly you're in it. Then you're in it, and then I think it's more about, right, you go into the next league and you're looking at these clubs who you've seen as big clubs. We're playing Workington now, and you go to these places, and actually when you get there, you think, hang on, we can do this. We can be better than these, and it was about that really. Everything was about, how do we make ourselves better? Of course, Andy's investment bumped us up a stage, but it just doesn't come from investment. You can throw money at things, but you've got to be aligned, you've got to want it, you've got to drive, you've got to put that pressure on, and that's, I think, where the success came from.
You say about professionalising, and you say about, the money's got to go in the right places. Going full-time, for me, looks to be the biggest step of all. I think recently you've seen the rise of Salford, who have kind of modelled themselves a little on Fleetwood as well. What is the difference when a club goes from, say, part-time to, say, semi-structured, where they're training mornings on some days, to just full-time? How does a club go about that? Because do they have to speak to the players? Do they have to do certain things? How does that come about?
Yeah, at the time, I'm not sure it was probably the biggest thing we've ever done. I think Poolfoot is probably the biggest thing we've ever done. However, that at the time was a big decision, but it was a necessary decision to, like you say, to make ourselves more competitive. We were training 3 nights a week. We were training at a place called Collins Park over down in South Shore, which I actually drove past yesterday and is now being bulldozed for developments down near the airport. So it was quite exciting that we'd turned a little facility into our own training ground. And the next natural stage was to talk to the players at the time about who could come on that journey with us. Certain players had careers where they couldn't. I remember, I think at the time there was a goalkeeper, Danny Hurst, who was unable to make the transition, worked in the day and didn't fit. I remember Sean Bealey, having difficult decisions with Sean Bealey at the time, who couldn't quite, I don't think, make it work. I might have some of this, like I said, I'm getting a bit old now, but I remember the difficult decisions.
Yeah.
It was really trying to work out who could come with us, and I think predominantly the players we wanted for that next season. Yes, they needed a little bit of a increase in salaries. In some cases, no, it didn't fill the full gap between what they might have been earning and the new salary. But we got through it, and I think it was a necessary step at that particular time. And a lot of them now, clubs you see, are maybe going from a younger dynamic. Those who they say they're full-time, they're probably more of a younger set of cohorts who can, do their college or university work from home, and it's probably not as big a transition as it was then, where we had a lot of senior pros.
So the rise from the non-league pyramid and eventually getting into the Football League, it was only a few years that you've joined, and then we've gone full-time and you're getting promotion after promotion. But the season in the National League, where we break loads of records, and a certain Jamie Vardy who's gone to do well for himself, how big at that time was Jamie Vardy for this football club? Because we started off the season not great. Vardy came in. We didn't look back after that.
Yeah, I can't say enough how exciting the non-league time was generally. Maybe just to go back a little bit before that, and you talk about great times at the club, and fans love winning football games. Last season, the last couple of seasons have been difficult. Whatever level you're at, if fans see positivity, they love it around their football club. And that's probably the overwhelming takeaway from me, is how exciting those times were. The Droylsden, the coming back in the semi-final, beating Alfreton in that dramatic end to the season, and then on to the National League. Yeah, while we didn't get that that game where we were playing and we won the league on that day, that season was we were just relentless, and fantastic group of players. We talk about dressing rooms, and maybe we'll come on to that. How a unit sort of clicks and works. And Jamie Vardy was, of course, the cherry on the cake from a very, very good group of people. We invested into the squad, but we went after players. We went deliberately after your Steve McNulty's and these types. We got in the building, told them what we were about, and we created that energy. And that season was phenomenal. Jamie Vardy was, you remember him for forever and a day being at this football club. It was, you think about him here and you feel like he was here longer, but of course he was only here for a very short space of time, but a fantastic time to be around the club.
Plenty of great players, just a few names, your Milligans, your Mangans, your McNultys, especially what Steve McNulty has done since leaving the club, promotion winning as well. The Jamie Vardy, the transfer, kind of Andy Pilley promised him, I promise you I'll get you your move, just score the goals and win us promotion. He did that. Has the club learned from maybe selling Jamie Vardy? Because There must have been a few times where we thought, well, would you a big payment here of a sell-on fee? When you sell Jamie Vardy and you're putting all these add-ons, do the club, since then, have you learned anything maybe going forward with selling future players that we could add this, and maybe put this in instead?
No, I wouldn't say learned specifically, because there's only so many things you would normally have in a contract, and often it's all around the circumstances. You know, sometimes clubs are reluctant to want to buy and pay for your player at a certain price, so the add-ons, you know, you want to take the money up front in certain cases. It's horses for courses on many of these things as to what actually goes in the contract. And also, you know, broad levels of value for players in this league. You know whether you want to sell them and whether you want to actually only sell if it's an overvalue, because you don't want the player to go. Brendan's probably, you know, a good example currently on that. So no, I wouldn't say we specifically learnt about it. You look back and think we maybe were a bit mental putting in an England appearance for a non-league footballer. You know, where did that come from? I can't remember. Why didn't we put a Premier League title in there? You'd probably been laughed out of town, but Leicester would have probably put it in. You don't know what you don't know at the time, but I don't think there's a lot we've learnt from that, other than it was at the time a record deal and probably a good deal. And had Jamie Vardy gone through a route out of Leicester, which many professionals in that sort of dynamic would have done, would have had the bigger payday. But you know, Jamie stayed loyal to a football club, and unfortunately for Fleetwood, that has meant no bigger payday.
Do you think the Jamie Vardy
Did I say loyal to Fleetwood then? I might have said loyal to Fleetwood.
Oh.
Loyal to Leicester. I said Fleetwood.
Do you think the Jamie Vardy transfers helped the football club attract players over recent years?
Yeah, he's a story, isn't he? He's always that fantastic story. We're a part of his fantastic career, and you know, propelled him out of the non-league into the limelight and the Championship, and for what he's done for himself and Leicester, will always be a small little corner of that story, which a story we can tell. So, yeah, it may be running its course and running its time, but Jamie Vardy's still scored at the weekend, so people still know him very well, and he played for Fleetwood.
You'd only been at the football club 4 or 5 years, and in that time the club had built the new Parkside stand, you know, the ground had had major development, the football club had gone full-time and won promotion to the Football League. Did you genuinely think 4 years, 5 years prior to that would ever happen?
No, I just didn't think in that way, and I don't think... we didn't think in that. I think we always thought, right, we want to get to the Football League, and you never really know what that looks like, or 4 or 5 year plans, none of that. It was just, right, this is what we need to do now. We need to build a bigger stadium, we need to build a better stadium, we need a training ground, you know, we need an academy. All the things that you grow as a consequence of you growing up the leagues, and as a football club, these things are essential ingredients for that next stage, for you to perform at the highest level you can perform at. So I don't think we ever thought, looking back and thinking, right, we surely can't get to the Football League. No, I think we always got there and thought we can get to the next stage. We can get to the next stage. We did in League One, you know, as you know, we almost flirted with promotion with 2 playoffs, and so could we have got into the Championship? Yes, we could have done. Can we do it again in the future? Yes. Why not?
Obviously, you mentioned about trying to build a platform, and when the football club gets into the Football League, how does your role and the football club change from going from a National League club to an EFL League 2 club? Because it's not just going at one league, you're all of a sudden going into a different brand from the National League to the EFL then.
I do remember thinking how more organised, maybe how many more things we needed to be across once you transition from the National League to the Football League, regulations and stipulations on your stadium and your match days and so many other things around it. So there was a lot more work involved in managing the relationships with the EFL, which is a huge organisation, 72 clubs, they've got 2 offices, countless members of staff, who are across many different aspects of the football club's, whole holistic entities. Whether it's the trust, whether it's the education for the scholars, whether it's about stadiums, whether it's about financial fair play. You've got departments looking after all these areas to which you need to comply, which enables you to become far more organised and better. So that transition from non-league, we'll still call it, from the Conference National, I think it was called, was it Conference Premier at the time?
Yeah.
Was huge, and the National League was only a small office with a limited number of people who, of course, naturally couldn't be across so many different things. So it was that transition which was the biggest and the best, because it takes us into a real professionally operated football league, and we're part of what is still known as the 92, isn't it?
Did you take anything away from that first season? Because it was quite difficult, wasn't it? Where the club kind of stabilised, finished in the mid-table reign. Graham Alexander come in around halfway through that season as well. What was the biggest learning points in that first season after such great momentum of getting promotion after promotion? I think it was 5 in 8, wasn't it?
I keep going back to the same thing. You're sometimes working, you're like on this sort of hamster wheel, really, and you just go in day after day to make things better, and all the time there's always something else to do. I think looking back, certainly that transition and the extra workload and the professionalism and opening our eyes and learning about the EFL, and we're going to the EFL conference and all the things, everything's like brand new. What's this about? What's that about? So it's a big learning process, really, and maybe one of enjoyment as well, just to go to these new Football League stadia, meeting the new directors and enjoying their company on match day. And I think we probably had more enjoyment that first season that we've made there, and we've got here now. But it wasn't long till Andy sort of rocket boosters. Let's get out of this league.
I'll always remember speaking to some Fleetwood fans and some Bradford fans coming up to us at the end of the game, going, "You're in the big boys league now." At the start of the season, it was like, well, we are, but we're here to stay, and we're here to potentially rise through the divisions. And that next season was eventful to end it with a promotion at Wembley. That dressing room that season looked united. It looked like it had a spirit. It was a great squad. It couldn't have ended in a better way. You've won promotions automatically, you've won titles, but to go to Wembley, the best stadium in the country, little old Fleetwood Town, who you'd only joined 6 years prior to that, when you're thinking, well, should I have left my job, my safe job, to go and play at Wembley and score? Andy Pilley's birthday as well. It was just magical, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was probably the overriding memories that day at Wembley. Hopefully we'll have more of those, but that was incredible, and that's where you're thinking, wow, we've achieved something here, a small town in the 92 Football League, and we've now got a promotion at Wembley. And it took a bit to sink in, I think, so much so that I remember that night, Andy couldn't even come out that night. I think he'd got soaked to the skin, the emotion and everything, and I think he'd eventually, it was that much of a draining and, physically overwhelming experience that Andy couldn't even come out at night. And I remember myself, I'd actually gone on a holiday, booked family holiday, not thinking we might get to the playoffs, somewhat foolish, never done it since. Of course, we ended up getting to Wembley, so I actually flew back from, I think I was in Tenerife. I remember flying back in the morning of the game, and then flew back at 4 the following morning after the game, and I remember just sat on that plane, slightly hazy, had a few drinks with the players after the game, pulling John Parkin out of the fountain outside reception and things like that. But I remember sat on that plane just for 4 hours on the way back to Tenerife and thinking, wow, and getting back there on my sunbed, and what a feeling that was.
How does a match day look as a CEO, not just at Wembley, but overall, maybe more so at Wembley, the occasion's heightened? Is it just, you're going into a boardroom and you're waiting for the match to begin, or is it a bit more than that?
It varies, really. Sometimes we will go for a meal in the town before, but that's more, it used to be more to sort of catch up with Andy on all the aspects, because while I was close to Andy in the offices, he was consumed by a lot of his day-to-day businesses, so he didn't get a chance to speak an awful lot. we'd fleeting half an hour here and meeting here and there, but Saturdays was an opportunity to go and chew the fat effectively about the football club and what's happening and where do we go. So it would be, maybe go in the van with Andy and go for a meal, and then we'd go to the boardroom maybe half an hour before kick-off, meet the other directors, and then enjoy the game. Sometimes we go and eat with the other directors where it might be a more local trip on a Tuesday night. I think it can be about the networking. You learn things from other directors, and you're always wanting to find out what they're up to and why they're doing what they're doing, etc. So it can be it can be any number of things, but mostly a bite to eat, really, really positive. And then on Saturday, coming home positive as well. Football hadn't ruined me Saturday.
Yeah, more than likely. And promotion to League One changed the football club. We were there for 10 years, and we'll come on to a little bit of that in a bit. But that was the start of Poolfoot then, wasn't it? And you mentioned it before, this is the biggest thing we've done. And you see the grass pitches, it's built for the community. When was the idea first put in place about Poolfoot Farm? And did you ever think it could get to this level that it is now, that it wouldn't just be a centre for the first team players, but for the academy and then the community and, as a place for local people?
We were looking at ways of getting involved more local to Fleetwood. We were based in South Shore, just one pitch, and we couldn't really grow from that. We wanted an academy. We wanted to grow, so we were looking at facilities. We ended up moving to Fylde Rugby Club over there in Ansdell to gain more access to a building, gymnasium and meeting rooms and things you needed, and more pitches. We had a couple of pitches there and access to a little five-a-side pitch. But it wasn't ours. And we wanted something which was ours, as good as the landlord's was at Fylde Rugby Club. You'd find yourself in an office and then somebody else would be in the office and it wasn't yours. You were in a corner and then somebody was near you. And so you couldn't really do everything you needed to. We needed our own place and space. So it was on the to-do list, and then we were made aware at Poolfoot Farm through Steve Abbott at Thornton Cleveland's FC that this piece of land was potentially available for the future relocation of Thornton Cleveland's FC from their Gamble Road site, and might we like to get involved in the complexity of this site and what the landowner's obligations were to them, and we might be able to play a part in that. We spoke at length with the landowner, we spoke with Thornton, and it just became apparent at the time it wasn't something we could directly get involved with Thornton, but we could do a fair amount of work ourselves, and part of that works would ultimately benefit Thornton Cleveland's as well. So Poolfoot Farm was born from those conversations, really.
And then since then, there's been many things built here. The Dome recently as well, the five-a-side pitches, the bars opened as well, opened by Sir Alex Ferguson as well. The level it's taken the football club to has helped. What the Dome, what about that? What's that helping with? Because obviously the academy now is coming into its fruition. Talk to me a little bit about that next step, about not just having this facility, but adding to it as well.
Yeah, many people know sometimes when you build facilities, they're never big enough.
Yeah.
The original design for the building actually didn't have most of the upper floor. And I remember Andy looking at the drawings and said, hang on a minute, this isn't big enough for us. So we ended up redesigning the upper floor, and then we built addition on the upper floor. And then this space we're sat in now was just an open. And he said, no, we need to have this. Typically, Andy, we need one of these. And of course, we did need it. We needed more space. So you're always growing. You've never enough space. We are actually finding out a little bit now that we might be a bit short of grass space. But one of the things we needed to do to gain the next categorisation of the academy to go to Category 2 was to have an indoor space. And we identified the platform for that indoor space. And not only for Category 2, but, we're in a windy part of the world here.
Yeah.
And once that rain blows, you half your body's wet through, and then you play the other half, and your other half your body's wet through, and for little kids, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, playing in the depths of winter in that driving rain does nobody any good. So I think necessary both for community and the academy players generally, and also it was, the reason was it did tick the box to get us to the Category 2. So it was essential for those reasons really to have an indoor facility as well.
Over recent years, the academy, the dome will help in future years, but going back to Poolfoot itself, has that been a factor in why players have come? A lot of times, big names have come here, or good players that you think that could go and play at a higher level, or maybe go and get a bigger team. No disrespect to us as it is. Is Poolfoot Farm on the list of this is what we've got that others at this level haven't got?
It's 100% is a draw. Ultimately, as we've seen, you want players to want to play for Fleetwood Town. This can be one of the reasons they want to play for Fleetwood Town, but it's important that this isn't the only reason. This gets them through the door. This gives them, I suppose, the inspiration and feeling to come into this football club. It's a gateway. Look at what we've got. I believe you've got a great training ground. It opens that market up to identify to more people, and then ultimately you've got to find out actually who actually wants to be here to play for Fleetwood Town. But 100%, it's given us a greater catchment opportunity because of what it is, and it's a fabulous place to work. I love it every day, walking in, looking out, and sometimes might be complacent that I'm watching training every day, and half the time I don't watch it now because I'm looking at my screen, and probably more so should just spend 5 minutes looking over the pitches and appreciating the work I've got and what we're doing here. But yeah, fabulous facility. Going
back to the early days in Sky Bet League One, we had some great memories. Any that spring to mind to you?
Sky Bet League One. I think it's always those wins that you get at those big clubs. Derby.
Yeah.
Winning away at Ipswich. Thinking we're going to get into, I think, the COVID season, up until COVID struck, I think we were in a fantastic role there. And I'm convinced we wouldn't have been far off from automatic promotion. Going to Sunderland, toe-to-toe in Sunderland away, great performances. It's those games you remember more so, those big stadia, and coming away with, 200 fans there. Absolutely going mental, winning at these big stadiums. That's probably the highlights. Is knowing you can do things, you can achieve big things with a small thing if you do things right.
A couple that you haven't even mentioned there, beating Sheffield United twice, a couple of times.
United, we were talking about the other week, Nick Horton's goal, we were talking about the other day, yeah.
I think the second time as well is probably the best complete performance I've ever seen from a Fleetwood side. Yeah. The 18-game unbeaten run under Uwe Rosler, and it's so many memories. You could be here all day picking a top 10. You mentioned about the COVID season, 12 unbeaten. I think we drew the first 3, then won 6 of the last 9. Peterborough, Coventry, Wycombe had only lost once at home all year. Go there Tuesday night with 10 men and win the game. There was a real momentum building under Joey and the team then. How then does the club adapt to that period of where there's no football, there's no income coming in? How did the football club then change?
Like everyone, when COVID struck, you didn't know whether you had a tomorrow, did you? I don't mean personally as a human being, but I mean more the business-wise in the football club. And I spent a lot of my time at that time being on the EFL board and also on the FA Council, being introduced to teams and spending half my life on teams, working out where we were going to get money from and how did we get money to even consider the football club continuing. So football itself at the time played second fiddle to bigger considerations about what this future might look like, and being part of the personnel within the board of the EFL trying to tackle with fellow CEOs in League One about how we would respond to it. And that's what was important at that time, is how do we make sure we have a future? And then that sort of calms down, doesn't it? There's funding that some levels of support comes in from Premier League loans and the furlough scheme, and before you know it, you're working out what that future might look like. And then the players are back. Strange feeling, all very clinical. It wasn't a nice time, and it wasn't expected, but of course it was no surprise that a club, and we were that club, just didn't get it right on the playoff day, and had we been continuing that momentum, as you said, I think we would have fared better. Just a rubbish time, and we had to unfortunately just suck it up and bow out gracefully at Wycombe, having got it wrong.
You mentioned your time on the EFL board and the FA board. What's that like? What's your role like there compared to somewhere like here day-to-day at Fleetwood?
Yeah, so I was the League One representative on the EFL board for 5 years, and you learn an awful lot. You start to understand how the EFL works from a regulatory perspective. You understand the issues around football clubs. Financial fair play has taken a huge part of the headlines. Even today, the Man City trial starts. That's consumed a lot of the time. Understanding this overspend on players' wages to income. And we're just another club that are in that same bracket. We are having to spend to continue to perform. How do we tackle these things? How do we work with government, which is obviously working its way through to improve the state of the game, to obtain some of the merits that are at the top of the game. And I do genuinely believe there's an awful lot of work which has gone into that from the Football League, and great to be a small part of that as a board member, working through all the complicated elements around that we got it to a point where I think it's inevitable that more Premier League funds will come down. It will come down with stipulations on how that can be spent.
Yeah.
And I think it's important it does, and I don't think it has an impact in what is the greatest league in the world, the Premier League. It's a small nibble, further nibble away at it financially, and clubs like ours can be sustainable forever without having to need an Andy Pilley or a Jamie Pilley to run the football club. It can be run sustainably, and I genuinely think with a very, very small improvement from the Premier League, that can happen.
Yeah, spot on. Now, a couple of years past the lockdown, the fans are back, football's resumed as possible. Do you think lockdown maybe sent this football club back a little bit after so many good years? You think about it, 6 promotions in 10 years, and then we had 10 years in League One at the time. It was 7 or 8 years in League One. Do you think that year maybe stepped the football club back a little bit from where we were going, very close to the Championship, and then a couple of seasons on the edge?
No, I don't think it was that. I think where we maybe couldn't move ourselves beyond where we were after we played Wycombe, we just end up in a cycle of new managers, and with a cycle of new managers comes a cycle of new players, and you're constantly trying to wash that through so a manager has his players and you've got the dressing room you need, and we haven't quite made that happen since Joey left. I don't think anything to do with COVID. I think since Joey left the building, we've failed to get that 100% right. We had a Scott Brown had a reasonable first season. You hope you'd build on that, but we didn't. I think that's it really. We'd never been able to get out of that cycle.
Absolutely agree. I think Barton was the 6th manager since we arrived in the EFL. Since we've had Grayson, Craney, Scott Brown, Lee Johnson, Charlie Adams the 5th, and that's only in the last 2-3 years as well. Going forwards then, now last year unfortunately the football club does lose Andy, and at times there was worries for the football club. What was done? What was your job to get that done, to get it sorted, to try and be able to run the football club? Because off the pitch, it just looked a little bit, not disorganised, but a bit of a mess at times last year.
From my perspective, it's probably the toughest time in my working career, having to navigate losing what I'd consider a personal friend, as well as somebody who was significant to this football club. And, the football club was probably seen as Andy Pilley. It was inextricably linked. So it was a shock and a big problem. And I did fear at times as to how we would deal with that, because at the same time, you've got Jamie, who's suddenly thrown into the BES business and having to navigate some huge issues around the bigger business about how does that start to manage, because of course Andy was the key and pivotal figure in that business. So there were so many things that Jamie suddenly was thrown into, and the football club was feeding off these bigger businesses. So I didn't know what that business was going to look like and how it was going to be able to support the football club. I put myself forward and started to support Jamie and some other individuals in helping them maybe understand where they were in the very early days, and helping them maybe not panic and think about things logically and what do we do next. And fortunately, after a relatively short period of time, the management staff within BES and Jamie, etc., was able to steady the ship there and keep the tap running as we needed it for the football club.
Yeah.
So a lot of my time was spent working on how do we get the football club and the ownership changed, because it had to change. The EFL served notice that Andy could no longer be our owner, and it was my job really to work through with the EFL, and this was a long process to try and convince the EFL that the best thing for this football club was to stay in the Pilley family ownership, specifically Jamie Pilley, and that Jamie was his own person. Jamie isn't Andy Pilley, and it shouldn't be the fault of Jamie that he couldn't own a football club because of the situation of Andy. The EFL thought long and hard about that. They worked out how they might be confident that the football club was genuinely owned by another individual, that it was being funded genuinely by that individual and not Andy Pilley. So there was a lot of toing and froing. There was a lot of legal documentation which had to be presented, and thankfully, after a long period, I think it was almost a year, we got to the point where the EFL were comfortable with the ownership structure, and were comfortable with myself at the helm during that period. Somebody they did know. Obviously, there's no favours, but they knew me, and enabled me to continue to run the football club in difficult circumstances while we went through this process. We talk about the off-the-field issues. Did it have an impact? Yeah, possibly. My mind was fried in some ways elsewhere. Trying to deal with those bigger issues. Maybe I didn't spend. I'd lost somebody who was always on top of things in the football club. The problems we have, Andy would try and fix them. We've no longer got Andy. I'm there trying to fix issues as well as having to deal with this. So maybe we didn't have that me and Andy resource which we were used to in identifying, fixing some of these problems. That said, it probably wasn't a mess behind the scenes. It was purely that which I've articulated, which maybe didn't provide the resource to make some of the right decisions. And ultimately, we ended up with, appointing Lee Johnson, which I thought was a real, credible individual, but maybe Lee was the wrong manager for this club at that particular moment in time, and that didn't work. And literally, I think that decision didn't work. And maybe, and again in hindsight, had we brought in Charlie a month or so earlier, maybe we might have stayed up. It's if buts and maybes, but I think the issue was that Lee didn't work at the football club, and often managers don't. Both come with the best intentions and didn't quite fit for the football club, and we couldn't get it right.
I think the dressing room is huge. You look at it 12 months ago compared to now, I think it's sticks and stones, completely different. How does a club go about changing a manager? Because from the outside, you just see club statement and then the manager's name. Is it a lot more complicated than that? Is it just a little chat you have? How does it go? How does it kind of come about?
On this particular, and you talk about the dressing room, then you talk about the manager. Just to go on to the dressing room, as much as I said, it didn't work with this football club and Lee Johnson at the time. The players themselves have got to take some responsibility. Yeah. And I felt some of those individuals we had hid behind issues they might have had with the manager. When sometimes it's like in your, you're in your exams and you've got a teacher you don't like, but you've got to do it for yourself. You've got to have that component within you which does it for you. It's your future. That's what you're trying to work for. You might not like your teacher. You might not like how they're teaching you, but you've got to grab this opportunity for yourself, because if you don't, who will? And I think that's what frustrated me a little bit. And that was probably an overriding feature now of how much importance needs to be paid. And you mentioned about the training ground. That's why I said the biggest thing is, are they right fit for the dressing room in Fleetwood Town? That dynamic has got to be so right. We just got a disconnect with players, manager, club, and that's why it went wrong. This year, touch wood, we're in a better place. Go back to your question, how do we recruit a manager? In this particular instance, I just felt because of the situation with the club in flux, the ownership hadn't been resolved. We had to go for somebody who would, come. Well, how can I phrase that? We didn't go through a full process. I just felt that right. We need to just tidy things up here. Get somebody who knows this building, knows the situation they're in. No big statements of aspirations. Somebody happy to be here, who we know, who can get the hands dirty and has got credibility within the game, who can come in this building and get the building moving. And I felt that's what it needed, somebody to get this building moving who knew this football club, wasn't concerned about these off-the-field issues because they knew us. And Charlie just came to us as that person. So there was no real, we need one of these, we need one of that. He was there and we thought, right, for me, it fits perfectly because of all the things I've said.
Relegated last year, although a really good fight in the end to stay in the division. You win 7 games out your first 42 and you win 3 of your last 4. And that you go back to so many games last year, the Exeter away, Bristol Rovers, Reading at home, Wickham away, for example, 2-0 up. Unfortunately, the club gets relegated. What's the economics? What changes at the football club financially in dropping down a division? Sponsorship maybe as well. What is the biggest worry about dropping a division? Might not have been a worry.
We'd planned, I'd try and plan a budget for both outcomes, because you never know what league you're going to be in, ultimately. So you've got to plan with 2 budgets in mind anyway. So I knew what the impact would be financially. We're blessed in year 1 that we do receive a parachute payment from our time in League 1. So it goes to fill a small hole as to what we've lost. But we managed to, reduce the playing budget, still competitive. But I felt we could manage the budget on lesser figures. You felt maybe you've failed a little bit, by getting relegated. What could you've done better? But I think there was also, once we were relegated, and we came close, by the way.
Yeah, 3 points off.
That Peterborough game, how we didn't win that game, we'll never know. But then sometimes you just, you take it on the chin. It's maybe a bit of relief in the end that it's over. The building was in a better place, so you've got this, I suppose it's quite incongruous, really. You've got this relegation, coming. It looks like you're in this relegation slide, but the building starts to feel better. So you felt like you've moved the building to a better place, and actually, you start to then think, is relegation actually not such a bad thing? maybe League One at the time, we're having to fight our way, spend probably, and ask for more money than we are asking for now from our BES, or now Ruby Energy as they are now, and maybe it's not such a bad thing. And winning games of football, getting yourself steadied and coming back with some resurgence is maybe not a bad thing sometimes. And the game's about promotion and relegation, so we've got to play our part in that. At some point we were going to get relegated. So it happened to be when I was the interim chair and CEO.
Good boy, Jamie's on board now. Recruitment this summer, some smart arrivals in the building as well. And Charlie Adam often said they've got to be the right fit for this football club. And it feels a real togetherness that they want to be here and they will be loved here, and we can polish them up and potentially sell them on, because that is the motto of the football club. Andy said it, Jamie said it yourself, Charlie as well. Are you happy with this season's recruitment, from the players going out to the players coming in?
Yeah, I've been delighted. We've done really, really well this window. Joe Riley, who few people will know, he's only been with us a couple of years and has transitioned from being a footballer to somebody working in recruitment tremendously well. He will tell you about any single player in the Football League and Scotland and beyond, and under 21s, and he knows them inside out. He knows now, working alongside Charlie, what we're looking for. We had clarity of how we were going to play or try and play, so it's so much easier from a head of recruitment point of view. Certainly when you've got limited budget, that we are quite specific in what we need. You can't be having different players to suit different formations and styles of play across every position. We've got to be quite lean. So to go after that specific type with a relatively, I go on to say again, competitive, but not the highest budget, to find players who want to play for this football club, and maybe players with a point to prove as well. So we really, really worked tirelessly to bring these players to the football club, and I think we've done a great job. The manager's done a great job selling himself and got great credibility within the game. Joe does a good job in selling this football club, and he's passionate about what he does. Poolfoot plays its part, and people feel this is a good platform for them to prove a point.
What's it like to work with Charlie Adam, as you've worked with a lot of gaffers in the last 12 months compared to Charlie? Seems a breath of fresh air. Yeah,
Charlie's been great. He's some managers can be a bit more needy and a bit more demanding. Charlie's not that. He comes in daily, he'll chat to us daily about how things are, but there's I think he just wants to do the best for himself and this football club. Fights his own corner, etc., as they all do. But I think we've got a great symbiotic relationship now with Jamie, myself, Charlie, Joe Riley, and I think it's going well. Unfortunately, we lost one of our key signings, Zach, early doors, which is a real blow, and it's not a position we can suddenly and freely fill. It looked like he was going to be one of our key and best performers this year, but that's football.
What's it like working with Jamie? Is it like working with a mini Andy? Or obviously, I know you said they're two different people, but what's he been like in his first kind of 4-5 months properly in the role? Obviously, here last year as well involved. Has he grown into it, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. He's had to grow up a lot over the last year. He is a mini Andy in some respects, or quite many respects as well. Always eager to know, always has an opinion on players, and always, wants to talk about why somebody might be on our recruitment list, and really engage, which is important. So he's as hungry as his dad. He's a supporter of this football club. You see what it means to him when we win football games. So working with him is, it's been enjoyable. Yeah.
What have you thought of the season so far, and what are the aims of this football club this season?
I think we started quite well. You can look at Saturday and thinking, wow, if we'd have lost that, we could have been third bottom. Then it doesn't look so bright and rosy.
Yeah.
But we didn't. A Wimbledon game, we probably didn't perform very well. poor decisions from the match official on the day, but irrespective of that, we were undone by a better team on the day. Notts County, we saw the quality that is in this league. We went at them early doors and made it a good show of ourselves. So, we'd gone toe-to-toe. Gillingham, who were right up there, and I think are they top now, Gillingham?
Notts County are top of the table.
Gillingham might be top
Gillingham
three.
top three.
Top three. They weren't great when we played them. We maybe should have won that game. So I think we've played, 3 of the top 4 now. We've beat both teams outside the top 7 that we've played. I think we're doing all right.
Just to finish, where I'll do some quick fire questions with you. Now, for this first one, I'll give you one in non-league and then one in the Football League.
Yeah.
You can't say the playoff final.
Yeah.
Favourite matches in both leagues?
Favourite match in the non-league?
Yeah.
One that stands out to me is probably the Southport away.
Yeah.
It was New Year's Day, wasn't it?
Yes, because we used to play them on Boxing Day, then back on New Year's Day.
Did we draw on the Boxing Day or get battered on the Boxing Day?
I think we'd lost them. I think we'd lost
at home.
Yeah.
And then went and battered him away. That was my. And also, actually, can I give you a second one as well? That goal of Vardy's against Grimsby and beating Grimsby on the Tuesday night as the season was coming to an end, because Grimsby were up there as well. Those games. And in the Football League, not the playoff final. I'd probably say, winning away at Sheffield United, winning away at Derby, winning away. Where else have we won at? Big games. You have to help me here, Ben.
Derby. Sheffield United, Derby. I think obviously
Portsmouth.
Yeah, Portsmouth 1-0. Jamil Matt scoring. Remember that? Took a good number there.
I do enjoy. I didn't. You sometimes.
Coventry, another one.
Sometimes the games you enjoy are them last minute ones, aren't they?
Coventry away, I think one. I think
the last minute winners.
Coventry.
I remember actually drawing at Bristol Rovers in the last minute. Do you remember the 99th minute at Bristol Rovers?
Oh, Sean Rooney.
Just the chaos around all that, and some of them moments.
Barton being involved as well.
The last second winner, the last minute equalisers. There's probably so many to choose from. But
Charlton, I think, when Amari Bell scored 95th minute, I think.
They're the best ones, aren't they?
We had a lot in that 2016-17 season. Favourite ground you've been to with Fleetwood?
Wow. Favourite ground I've been to?
Doesn't need to be the biggest.
Well, it probably would be. It'd probably be Sunderland.
Who's got the best boardroom in the Football League? And that can be for, say, a meal or,
I'm going to say Sunderland again. It's a fabulous old, oak-panelled, proper old boardroom hosted by one of their ex-pros. That's how you do it.
Absolutely. Who would you say is your best mate director-wise that you go and you think, I can have a good catch-up today at a football club?
I remain good friends with Phil Brown. We went to Ireland last week. We went to watch Northern Ireland under 21s, England 21s. Saw Barry Bagley come on. Went to the Ireland-England game after. Phil loves his ground hopping. He's in Slovakia at the moment with some Fleetwood fans, Brian Houghton and pals, doing a few grounds in their retirement. Hopefully, at some stage in my later days, I'll be able to get around a few more grounds and maybe have a beer with Phil, seeing a few weird and wonderful grounds around the world.
On ground, a ground that you've not been to that you'd like to go with Fleetwood. So think of a cut run.
A ground I've not been to.
So, or a ground that Fleetwood haven't been to.
Well, yeah, probably the ground I've not done as well, and I've not done Arsenal, Brentford, Brighton, West Ham.
Plenty of new ones on there. Good revenue for the football club. So Charlie might be eyeing up that January transfer budget. Favourite goal? There's a few you could pick from here.
Favourite goal? I think I've said it. That Jamie Vardy one against Grimsby. So important. It was at that particular time. The angle of it. That's what he was all over. And I think the importance of that goal at the time. Not obviously alongside the Sarcevic free kick, but outside the cup final, maybe that one.
Milligan.
But actually, you look back as well. You said, remember the Lee Thorpe goal against Alfreton, and I think it's not about the best goal you've seen. Sometimes it's about what emotion comes from these goals, isn't it?
Yeah, Milligan as well from the halfway line. I think Farsley
Nick Horton
Celtic.
scored a fantastic one at Sheffield United. We spoke about that the other day. I mentioned it before.
Yeah,
That was probably one of the
turning shot away.
Yeah, one of the better goals we scored.
Describe Fleetwood Town in one word.
Resilient.
Anything you'd change since you've been at Fleetwood, so any regrets?
Any regrets? Give me a moment. Any regrets? None really. Not building enough grass pitches at Poolfoot.
And if I was to ask you, put you on the spot here, since you've been involved, a Fleetwood, say, five-a-side team that's going to go out on the cages out there and perform for you in the prime, who are you going for?
Five-a-side player?
Oh, five-a-side team, so you got goalie, maybe a defender, two midfielders and a striker.
Well, striker, you'd have to have Vardy. You'd have Milligan in there.
Yeah.
Goalkeeper, it'd be wrong not to have Alex Cairns in there. So that's 3. We're going to need a defender here, aren't we?
Pondy?
And yeah, it's going to have to be Pondy. And who else are we going to have? Somebody who's who we had who's really, really quick and nippy, and we'd probably say. Who do you have in my five-a-side team? Trying to think of somebody who's played quite a few games. Could it be wrong to pick
Sarcevic potentially. There's only 20 players in the 100 club. Sarcevic is one.
I'd go for Paddy Madden as well.
Madden, you'd just go all out attack.
I would, yeah.
Because that's what five-a-side's about, outscoring.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Steve, thank you for joining me today. Massively appreciated, and I hope you've enjoyed the episode at home. Please make sure you give us a like if you're on YouTube or a follow if you're on Spotify as well. That'd be appreciated. Steve, thank you very much.
No, thanks, Ben. Keep it up.